Hello, this is Michael Hull, and this presentation is part of my Washington State University EMBA Capstone A project. In this presentation, I am summarizing interviews with gurus and customers for the expense and revenue segment of my feasibility study. My main goal in this section was to get a feeling for what gurus suggested for customer revenues for wellness and compare that to responses from customers in terms of what they are willing to pay for these services. This week I was willing to meet with 3 of my 4 primary gurus, with the exception of Deanne Whitehead, who indicated that she didn't have much experience with the expense and revenue portions of implementing wellness programs. I also met with my same 6 customers as previous. I found that it was a valuable experience to get different perspectives from gurus and customers, which I'll explain later in this presentation. For expenses, I gained very little from my interviews in terms of expenses for my proposed wellness offerings. Dr. Davenport did state that a successful on-site clinic must have a mid-level provider, meaning an ARNP or Advanced Registered Nurse Practitioner, or a PA, a physician's assistant, instead of a physician. Also from previous interviews, I've learned that I must realize that expense control will be pushed by administrators, but must also be balanced with the value of the service offerings. I'll get down to the detail of expenses in the business plan portion of my capstone project. I'm confident with the value of my proposed plan, but will need this level of detail to sell this to administration. The revenue section of my interviews was very enlightening. I found that there may be some room for further investigation in this realm in terms of responses from gurus and customers. In previous interviews, it has been clear that getting engagement from customers and finding ways to get them to participate in wellness was a major challenge. Customer engagement is vital for success. As a result of this concept, gurus have stated that you shouldn't charge, or charge very little, for your wellness services. They stated that the key goal is to remove barriers to access and incentivize the customer to quote-unquote purchase wellness services. I put purchases in quotes since they've suggested no charges. On the other hand, when interviewing customers, I found that most are willing to pay, and the amount that they'd be willing to pay is not insignificant. This could be a major factor for ROI calculations for my wellness program. I found that the customers that were not willing to pay stated that they wouldn't utilize the services at all. This indicates to me that payment of services is not a barrier. Since I only interviewed 6 customers, I'll need more information on this topic to determine recommendations for my business plan. This is definitely something to explore as I proceed with my capstone project. In summary, I'll need to further study the expected expenses from my wellness offerings. This expense will be dependent on the extent of services. For example, what clinic hours will be offered for the on-site clinic? What segments of the population will be offered MTM services? Will it be the targeted segment, or will it be the overall population? And how much will we charge for brand versus generics? What is the difference in brand versus generic price that will incentivize customers to choose generic utilization? I will also need to further investigate what the customer is willing to pay, and if they're actually willing to pay these amounts in a real-world scenario, or if this is just what they're responding to something that sounds like a good idea. Obviously, these are all key aspects to developing my business plan for Capstone B. All in all, the responses to these interviews confirm that I can continue with the hypothesis testing with no pivot needed.